You are listening to the Mountainside Podcast, and our guest for this episode is Brandon Dunham. He's a former wildland firefighter who has worked on multiple hotshot crews, Helitack modules, engine companies, and as a Type 4 incident commander across the United States for the Bureau of Land Management and the U.S. Forest Service. Brandon is also the creator and host of the Anchor Point podcast. We recorded this episode virtually from his studio in Reno, Nevada. It was a great conversation. We did a deep dive on wildland firefighters, what they go through. We talked about fire mitigation and so much more. If you live in an area that could be affected by a wildland fire, I highly suggest you listen to this episode in its entirety. I enjoyed recording with Brandon, and I hope that you enjoy our conversation. Thanks for joining me tonight, man. I'm super excited to talk to you. I listen to your podcast all the time. First and foremost, how's it going, man? How was your day?
It's going good, man. Just, living the dream. It's some people's nightmare sometimes, but it's still a dream. You're still asleep, right?
Yeah.
No, it's been going good, man. It's going good today.
And where are you at currently? You guys are in Reno, right? Or somewhere around that region?
Yeah, I'm based out of Reno, Nevada, actually. It's
okay.
Beautiful. Yeah.
How hot is it there right now?
It was 102 today.
Damn, dude. It was even hot here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we it's been getting warm, and, during this podcast, I want to do a deep dive with you on wildland fire, your experience in it, and that's primarily what your podcast is about, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's kind of like I guess it's kind of evolved. It started off as kind of like I guess probably much like other podcasts start out, you're just like, I'm going to do everything all at once, and kind of morphed into its own thing. And it turned into pretty much a wildland firefighting culture podcast. So it's like firsthand accounts of people's stories, like what they've experienced. It's real heavy on the mental health, which we'll probably get into in the show. And just advocating and building better firefighters through shared experiences and sharing that with the world.
Yeah, no, it's super important, man. And my hat goes off to all the first responders out there, man. We'll dive some more into that because I want to pay some respect to them, man, because it's super important. Like, believe it or not, today, a couple hours before this, and if I get the call, I'm going to end this podcast early. We got a wildfire going right here. It's not very big at the moment, but it started this afternoon. It's the Snow Creek, I think is
Snow
what they've
Creek.
dubbed it as. And it's about 10 miles from here, but my grandparents live super close to it, and they're in their 80s. So it's like, if they call me, I'm going to go help them get out of the house if they actually get evacuated. But
yeah,
for right now, they're safe. So
how's their defensible space? Pretty good?
Yeah. I mean, they don't have any trees near the house. The mitigation's really good around the property and stuff. And there's a lot of roads access around them. They're kind of in like a subdivision that has 5-acre parcels.
Okay.
So yeah, it's pretty good. It's just where that fire is at currently is super steep. There's a huge, I forget, I think it might be called Widow's Peak or something. It's a really famous rock climbing route. And it's kind of at the top of that or at the base, somewhere around there. I don't know exactly where it's at. So it's super steep terrain just to get to the base of that because we've hiked it a couple times. So I can't imagine what those guys are going through right now. And luckily, last I heard, Douglas County's in there with a helicopter dumping water on it. So
nice.
Hopefully, I think it's a couple acres right now. So if they got a pretty good jump on it, I think. But
yeah, as long as the weather cooperates, I mean, as long as it doesn't, like the wind, especially, the wind is going to be the primary driving factor. It's always wind and topography. I mean, the heat, the ambient temperature, and the humidity obviously play a role in that, but the higher those two numbers are and the steeper the terrain and the stronger the wind is, especially when it aligns with the terrain, that's when it's off to the races.
No, it's insane. Yeah, it's luckily the weather's fairly calm today, but we are having some gusts, so we'll see. We'll see what it does overnight. It always seems like during that cool down period at night, we start getting a little bit more wind because you have all the hot air and cold air kind of mixing together right there on the Front Range, and that's right where this fire started. So I'm hoping some of those updrafts and downdrafts aren't, fueling it some more tonight.
Oh, yeah. Those diurnal winds, man, they go uphill during the day and then downhill with the cold air at night. It kind of makes for some challenging firefighting experiences. That's for sure.
I can imagine. It's challenging for elk hunting too.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have to figure that out real quick, especially in that elk are always in these deep, dark holes, and that sort of thing. So I know firsthand being an elk hunter that's your worst enemy is the wind.
Oh, yeah, especially if you're doing archery and you have to get up close and kind of personal with the animals. But, yeah man, my dad's super into archery, but for some reason this year we both got skunked on tags, and this is the third year in a row that I got skunked on everything that I put on for this hunting season. So,
oh, man. Are you an archery hunter? Or?
Hell no, man. I ain't got no time for that. No, I'm one of those lazy rifle hunters. So rifle
there's nothing wrong with that, man. It's all hard, man. It is not easy. I'll give you that, And do you hunt in Nevada then, I guess?
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah, dude. Yeah.
What's the elk population like there? I know that there's an elk herd like running around. And can you even draw a tag? Or I'm sorry, I'm an elk fanatic, so
oh, dude, same.
We're
here.
diving off down a rabbit hole right now.
Oh, let's go there. So the elk populations here, they migrate a lot, right? Mm-hmm. So they go over the border into Idaho, and they're typically found in northern Nevada and eastern Nevada. They don't get down too far south, obviously, because the climate's not going to be right for them down there. But we have a pretty big population of Rocky Mountain elk down here, and unfortunately, I have yet to draw one of those damn tags.
Wow. Is that like a lifelong thing there to draw a tag? Because like to draw a bighorn sheep here, just because the population isn't that vast, and it's a pretty sought after big game animal to hunt. It's like once in a lifetime here in Colorado. There's guys that put for like 30 years and they can't draw one,
Yeah, because we have desert bighorn and Nelson sheep over here.
That's right.
And those are both like the cream of the crop, once in a lifetime hunts. But as far as like elk, deer, mule deer, you could probably be every 3 years, you'll probably be successful in your draw. But for elk over here, it's probably 5 to 7 years you'll be successful in your draw. Unless you win that silver state tag.
Yeah. We're super fortunate here in the state of Colorado because even if you don't draw, there's so many open game units.
Mm-hmm.
And actually it's open to out-of-staters too. I mean, if you're...
What are you doing this fall?
Yeah, come on up, man. I just put in for a secondary draw, so it's like people that haven't paid for their tags or whatever, and sometimes you can draw one on that, but I struck out on my elk and drew my deer tag this year, but it's all right, man. Once you get in there, I'd almost rather wait a few years and not have as many hunters to deal with than like, I don't know. It's kind of a double-edged sword, but
dude,
I'd love to hunt epic land every year, but
yeah, it's hard though. I mean, you got to put in the work for it, and you got also it's kind of luck of the draw, right? I mean, we have tons of antelope over here, but still they don't put out a lot of tags. I mean, certain areas they put more. Dow has a pretty good survey program to where they release numbers and then release tags accordingly. I think they're pretty proficient with their big game management. They're pretty damn good with their bird management too. I don't know if you're a chucker hunter by any chance, but that's one of the. Oh man,
I did a little bit of pheasant hunting and duck hunting back in the day, but I haven't touched any of that. And God, I don't think I've picked up a rifle to hunt in like 20 plus years, man. Archery's my jam. So
I hear it was like, it's kind of like an addiction. Once you get into archery, like there's nothing else like it.
Oh, it's crazy. My entire last podcast that we just recorded was solely on archery pretty much. I got inducted, which sounds very entitled, to a 3D archery range up here that's fucking amazing, man. They have like 40 pristine Reinhardt targets, and they range from moose to caribou, and these are life-size targets, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then there's some shots, that are off of like a 50-foot cliff that are straight down, a lot of uphill a lot of terrain. You do a lot of hiking and stuff. It's about, if you do all 40 targets, it's close to, I think, like almost 4 miles. And you'll climb 1,200 feet in elevation in those 4 miles. So it's a lot of up and down, and it's fun,
good
man.
practice though for the actual thing, right?
Yeah, I actually enjoy that more than hunting, and I always get bashed for that. But I enjoy going out there and shooting those foam targets more than I do, because after you do it, you just pull your arrow out. The work doesn't even begin. It's just like, it's just,
you don't have to sit there and quarter everything and gut it, and drag it down the hill, and hope you make it out of there before sunsets, where you're stumbling over shit at night. But my buddy who owns Hotshot Brewery, he's super into that 3D archery shooting, man. He's he's like an archery diehard. He loves it. He's
It's
trying
so
to get me
addicting,
into it, but
man. It really is. I try to go at least twice a week, and
nice.
do all 40 targets. So if I can get 80 targets in a week, I'll be smiling.
Nice. That's good for your fitness, man. But yeah, he's been trying to get into me, but I'm like apprehensive about getting into the whole archery game because I'm like one of those super ADHD, hyper focused kind of brains. So once I get stuck on something, it's just like, oh no, we're gonna take this to the extreme.
Yeah. Do you have kids at the moment?
I got 2.
Oh shit, yeah. See, I got 3, so that narrows your hobbies. Like I used to ride Harleys, stand up paddle surf, go on vacations, had dirt bikes, golfed, all that. The only thing I do now is archery.
Yeah,
it's like that and work, So
for me, I used to do a lot of USPSA and like 2-3 gun competitions. And then, once COVID hit, obviously ammunition prices just skyrocketed.
It's
so
insane.
And then you have 2 kids on top of that. Well, I want to pick up fly fishing, and everybody's probably going to laugh at me because I said, oh yeah, I picked up fly fishing, which is just as fucking expensive as 3 gun.
Oh yeah, no, it really is.
USPSA.
God, it's so much fun though. That is one thing I haven't put down, but I don't go like religiously. Like I haven't even been there yet this season. Like that's how busy I've been. So,
oof.
But it's good.
It's hard,
good
man.
problems to have, Like the kids are busy. I'm busy with the podcast. It's all encompassing, man. So, and then archery is always my focus in the summer because trying to get ready for September is always, I start planning about 13 months before the next hunting season. So I actually got to start planning for 2023. Like next month. It's my mentality.
I think a lot of people they kind of get lost in like the fact that, you're just going to go hunt. You're going to go out there and hike around for a little while and, shoot an animal, this poor innocent animal. I'm like, no, let's pump the brakes and reel that back in for a second. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And also it costs a lot of money, especially like getting your ramp up and to get the gear and the camo and ammunition, sighting your rifle, gas to go scout, whatever, it takes a lot of effort. And I think for hunters like you and I think that develops a very healthy relationship with being out in the wild, and especially the animals that you're harvesting. There's a certain level of respect that you have to have for something that's going to sustain your life by you taking its life,
And I mean, really, that's the main reason why I do it is solely for the meat, man. Like I'm cooking on the grill every day, sometimes for breakfast, it's like,
oh yeah, dude.
Yeah. My wife's like, I'll be grilling at 6 o'clock in the morning. She's like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, I'm making a steak, like,
don't worry about it.
Man problems,
Right. Meanwhile, you're trying to figure out your bass chorizo recipe for like all the like pieces of meat you don't really want to like cook into steaks,
That's right. Yeah, that's 100%. But yeah, I try to keep the freezer stocked, man. That's the main purpose, and the whole family enjoys it too, So that's a good thing. I think if they weren't all into it, I don't know how much I would be either. But
yeah, kind of influences your decision making. Going down the road of life is once you have kids and a wife and all that stuff. It kind of influences what you do for fun or what you eat.
Oh, big time, man. Yeah, it really does. And fortunately, I've kind of influenced my son to be into the things. He loves to fish. He loves to shoot his bow. Yeah. So we can go out and do that stuff together. And even my daughters, they'll shoot too and stuff. But
dude, I can't wait until my kids are old enough to, be my fishing buddies. Go out there and teach them how to fly fish.
How old are they currently?
So one's 16 months old and one is 6 weeks old.
You told me this the other day on the phone. I'm sorry. Yeah. No,
back to back, man.
Yeah, you're in the weeds right now. But it's funny, man. It'll happen sooner than you think. And I know that's a cliche thing to say. And like, I never really realized it until I had my third, because I just wanted the first 2 to grow up so fast so I could go out and go fishing and go do archery and take them paddleboarding and do all those sort of
all the
things.
Fun stuff.
And then my third one, I was like, don't grow up. Just fucking stay a baby as long as you possibly can, so it's made me enjoy it a little bit more, because the first time it was just like, when are they going to be out of diapers, all that sort of stuff. And then the third one I really enjoyed it because I realized, she came a little bit later, so my daughter was 9 and my son was like 6 when she was born. So yeah, I kind of realized like this goes a lot faster and they're so much fun at like 3, 2, 4 is amazing, dude. Like it's all good.
Oh, dude, you got any life pro tips? Because right now, my son Levi, the oldest one, the 16-month-old, he's going through a little bit of a culture shock right now because we have newborn in the house and he's not the man of the house anymore, right? So if you got any life pro tips, man, by all means, lay him out.
Man, just get him to help, dude. Tell him it's his responsibility. Make him change a diaper, like
go mow the lawn.
Yeah. Give him some responsibility, I guess that's one thing that always worked for us, was just like, hey, you're going to watch your brother and I'm going to go mow the lawn or whatever, you know what I mean? I'll be right here, and you're checking every 5 minutes, you're not actually out there mowing the lawn or getting anything done because you're a fucking nervous wreck.
Just paranoid that the fucking house is going to explode.
Just give him some responsibility,
shit.
That'll make them grow up faster too. So you got to be careful how much you give them, because next thing they're like, Dad, can I borrow your car? I got to go to the liquor store or whatever,
You're 8. What?
100%.
That's funny, man.
Well, shit, man. Let's, I want to really spend some time. I don't know what your time limitations are tonight, but man, with your vast knowledge of wildland fire fighting, the time that you've spent in the backcountry fighting fires, what you do with the podcast, and everything else that you're doing in the community currently, I guess let me just start with this, man. My hat goes off to all the men and women that are out there fighting a fire right now that's 5-6 miles down the road. And I'm super thankful, man. We've been evacuated several times growing up in Colorado. It's kind of a normal thing if you live in the mountains or in the foothills. It's just one of those things, man. It's basically a natural disaster that at some point you're gonna have the reality of it might be at your back door, right?
Oh yeah. It's not a matter of if, it's more of a matter of when.
Yeah, no, 100%. And we're seeing wildfires grow. It seems like they're more and more, and by science, there's more and more of them each year. They're more destructive. There's more homes moving into wilderness areas, right? So there's more to protect. We're going to dive into all that stuff, but just to all the first responders out there, their families, I think it's a community that's overlooked sometimes and definitely underpaid from the wildland firefighter standpoint. I think that, experiencing it 2 years ago, we had a fire right here at Elephant Butte. I think it was the Elephant Butte fire, and it was super close to home. We actually got evacuated. It was close to the podcast studio. And the force that they threw out that with, helicopters and planes and different fire agencies coming from all over the state to come in and put it out, because there's so much home density right around where it started. And I'm pretty sure it was lightning or something that started that one. I don't think it was a human error, but yeah, man. And then, I got evacuated way back when in the Hayman fire, because I was living down kind of in that area. And that was another big one that was totally eye-opening. So firsthand, experience and what those guys go through and what they do and how they put their lives on the line, man. I want to pay some respect to them during this episode. So thank you if you're listening to this and you're a wildland firefighter or a firefighter, police officer, anybody that's dealing with any of that sort of stuff that normal people don't want to deal with, man. We appreciate you. I guess let's just start with your background, man. You've worked on multiple hotshot crews, Helitack, am I saying that right?
Yep.
Helicopter firefighting. You've been on engine companies, a Type 4 incident commander all across the U.S. for Bureau of Land Management, right? And U.S. Forest Service. Can we just kind of dive, how did you get into this? Do you come from a lineage of firefighters, or, where'd you grow up, that sort of thing? And is this something that you always wanted to do, and how you ended up in those seats?
Well, I hope you got some time, because I could talk forever. Well, I hate talking about myself, but I could talk forever about fire. How about that? So yeah, I mean, I was born in San Diego, East County boy, El Cajon, La Mesa represent. And we moved up here to Reno probably when I was about 5-6 years old, and did the whole small town, because Reno was a small town back then, and grew up here, went to high school at Spanish Springs High School, and got out of high school, kind of was one of those impressionable young 18-year-old kids with a bad attitude and a nose for trouble. It's this
I
common
know
theme
the
among
feeling.
first responders. So, and got into like banking, and I was like a teller at a bank, and then I started saying, no, this is stupid. I don't want to do that. And it was unfortunately pre 2008 crisis. So I had some, I guess, some buyer's remorse on that dumbass decision with getting into banking at that time. Got out of that, and I went into the sheet metal union. So I started, my dad's a contractor, so I've been building shit my entire life, right? So framing, grid, whatever, drywall, stuff like that. Got into the sheet metal game because I went to Vegas for VICA in high school, and, did the whole sheet metal and TIG welding competition down there. It was pretty cool. So naturally I get back into the trades because I have a background in it, and got bored of that and the consistency with the union during that time. It's a boom or bust kind of town around here. Either things are popping off, and I was kind of sick of that. So I got into something a little bit more consistent and put my name in the hat, and threw my name in the hat with the Carson City District Bureau of Land Management, getting into wildland firefighting, right? I had no idea what wildland firefighting was. I didn't even know it was a thing. You see, like the common person, you ask them, or they see you at the store or something like that, and they ask you, oh, what do you do? You're in your greens and your crew shirt or whatever, trying to, get a salad or whatever healthy you can find at a store. And they ask you like, oh, do you work for CAL FIRE, or are you a smoke jumper? And it's like the quintessential response from general public, just not because of like, I don't know. I guess it's just naivety, like 'cause a lot of people don't know about what a wildland fire, a federal
You really have to
specifically.
dig, man. Like I've had to dig.
Yeah.
I've wanted to have a hot shot on or somebody from that community for a long time. We've been talking for a long time, and we're finally able to set this up. But like to find out anything about it, it's kind of a secret society a little bit, even though those guys are on the front lines and stuff. And it's just not. I guess there's just not a whole lot of publicity on it.
No, and then you look at, agencies like CAL FIRE, everybody knows who CAL FIRE is. I guarantee you that someone in fucking Maine will know who CAL FIRE is, right? Oh, they're the wildland firefighters, right? And they're different, right? They have a different set of mission. They still are all risk, but they primarily protect California public lands, right? State lands. So that's their mission, right? But they have I kind of compare CAL FIRE to a PR agency that fights fire on the side because they have excellent PR, right?
Yeah, their equipment's fucking incredible. Like those red dozers and all the shit that they have, man, it's pristine.
Type 3 interface engines.
Yeah.
They got, structure trucks too. I mean, they got the gambit. They do everything, right? Same thing with, your municipal departments. They still step foot in the black, like the Wildland Firefighter theater. And you say you're a firefighter, you instantly think of that. Or you see some like cheesy movie from the 70s about smoke jumping, and that's a smoke jumper, right? So not until recent history, unfortunately, with the tragic loss of the Granite Mountain 19, that it became public knowledge basically of what a hotshot crew is, right? So that kind of put hotshots on the map. Unfortunately, it came out of tragedy, but that's kind of what put hotshotting into the public perspective. Otherwise, wildland firefighting in general is pretty much a silent professional kind of career path, and not a lot of people talk about it. That, and it's a hidden problem, right? You see smoke in the forest, you see crew buggies, engines, dozers, and all this stuff flying around for 2 weeks or a month or however long it takes to fight the fire, and then they disappear off to the next fire. They just show up, do their work.
I mean, all across the country,
public,
right? I mean,
all across the country, yeah. They do their thing.
Sometimes
they do
across
their
the world.
Take off. Yeah. I mean, very often, like people have gone to Spain, Israel. We're kind of, we fall under FEMA, so we have the ability to go for wherever, for natural disasters like Hurricane Katrina. They put COVID shots in people's arms at vaccination centers. They've responded to the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster, and they had hotshot crews like spanning out, basically combing the forest down there,
search and rescue,
looking for
stuff.
parts. Yeah, search and rescue. We're jacks of all trades, but not a lot of people know about the utility behind a federal wildland firefighter. It's pretty wild.
No, it's insane. And honestly, I got to say, like, where I've gotten most of my knowledge is from firsthand, like, social media. So Instagram, those sort of Twitters, those sort of type of things where guys are being a little bit more public with their selves and their careers. And And then actually I know a few local guys, that do wildland firefighting and stuff, and you don't see them very often. They're not home very, very often, man.
Especially for that 8 months out of the year during the summer.
Yeah. It's pretty constant.
But yeah, I guess I found out about it though, because my dad's best friend Scott, he's a smoke jumper, a former smoke jumper. He just recently retired, but he kind of suggested it to me. He's like, "Well, you're kind of a fuck up, and you're kind of athletic. You'd be great at digging holes in the desert or in the forest with 20 other people. You should try this." So he kind of guided me and mentored me into that career path, and got out of it. Did it for 11 years. Started off in Carson City, moved, got my apprenticeship up in Oregon in Region 6 of the Rogue Siskiyou National Forest. Went and screwed around with Redmond Hotshots. That was super fun. I taught at the academy down in Sacramento, the Wildland Firefighter Apprentice Academy. I was also going through that academy as well. I was Academy 66, and then I taught at Foundational Academy 2. And then I came kind of full circle back down to Nevada, out east in Ely, Helitack, and then back to Carson City and finished out my career there.
Can you explain to me Helitack? Like, is that basically you're picking up water and dropping it on the fire? I know that guys rappel out of helicopters. I know that there's all kinds of different, input and output extraction type stuff. What were you doing there? Were you a pilot?
Oh God, I wish, man. If I was a pilot, I'd still be a pilot.
Right.
But yeah, so let's break it down. So Helitack is a kind of a ambiguous term. It's like an umbrella term, right? So I guess Helitack, you have kind of some major platforms. You have your light helicopters, like your A-Stars, your Bells, right? You've got your medium ships, and those are like your Hueys that carry a little bit more people, a little bit more water, a little bit limited on performance. But of course I'm biased. I like flying in my A-Stars, 4-person crew, land out in the desert and just get to work. But then you have your Type 1 helicopters, and those are like your big Sikorskis, the big orange or crazy looking helicopters out there that are carrying massive amounts of water, up to like 2,000 gallons, I think, depending on their load calcs. But you also have like Blackhawks, that's a Type 1 helicopter. And you have like your K-Maxes, the thing that's kind of have like, look like mosquitoes, right? They have dual rotors. They're cool looking, right? Super high performance aircraft. So that's a basic like 3. Now, out of that light and medium platform, those are the only 2 you could fly people on, right? So you have Helitack, which is like a smaller aerially delivered firefighter. They fly out, they pick up their guys from Helibase, they fly out to the fire, they make insertion. 3 to 4 dudes or people jump out of the helicopter. They hook the Bambi bucket up to the belly hook of this helicopter. Pilot goes, flies, and finds water. You establish basically an anchor point with your little crew, or if you have to go pick up more and insert more, whatever, cargo, whatever. Then they fly and pick up water, come by, and then they drop water ahead of you, and you clean up the line and chase fire with that. Then on the Type 2 ships, you have your repellers, your short haulers, and also Helitack. Same kind of configuration. Your short haulers are going to be primarily medical. However, they did just make history here recently by inserting into a fire, and that's usually extraction method is the short haul method, right?
Okay.
So that's pretty cool. So they're probably going to try and play with that here probably shortly. You have your repellers as well. They basically repel into wildland fires. And then you have your Helitack crews, which are on Type 2 medium ships. They do the same thing as a Type 3. All of these guys and girls, they do all these platforms. They do cargo, they do water drops, they do medical, they do a lot of stuff. And it's probably my favorite platform because there's
sounds pretty
no
incredible,
better way.
Man.
Yeah, dude, it's so cool, like orbiting a fire. And I'll send you some videos. I can see if I have some in my hard drive from like back when I was fighting fire with either Vegas or Ely Helitack there. And dude,
That's
it's so
super
much
dope,
fun.
Man. It's almost along the lines of like I mean, obviously you guys aren't getting shot at, but you're flying into some fucking pretty serious danger, and
it could be
helicopter insurgents and that sort of thing is pretty fucking cool, man. So
yeah,
I've always been fascinated with helicopters.
Still not as crazy as the smoke jumpers, though. I think jumping out of a perfectly good aircraft at 3,000 or 1,500 feet, depending on if you're jumping a square or round, that's wild.
And some of those guys or girls, there's a lot of
yeah.
females that do it too, right?
Oh yeah.
They're stuffed with like 100 pounds of gear or more, right? Like they're jumping in with chainsaws and all kinds of stuff, and then they have a bunch of gear that deploys outside of them jumping as well, right?
Oh yeah. So what they'll do is they'll jump the fire, and they have their their big giant outfits that they wear with the padding and like their gears in there, like their actual like line gear. They have like the big helmets and everything like that. So they'll jump out, exit after they find a suitable landing spot. They'll land, and then what happens next is after everybody's out the door and on the ground and engaged and like trying to do their thing, right? Size up the fire and establish command. The plane will come back over in a reconfigured state and start kicking out cargo. So that's chainsaws, tools, water, all that stuff. They'll kick that stuff out the door. It's like paracargo missions, and then they get operationally engaged in the fire.
Yeah, no, that's a wild job.
Oh yeah.
I guess my next question is, I feel like in the last 20 years, I don't really remember as a young kid growing up, wildfires really being a major issue. And it seems like they're more prevalent now. They are more prevalent now. Yeah. There's more of them. Like I said, we're encroaching on some of those wilderness areas with subdivisions and structures, and there's a lot more people recreating, and especially since COVID, man, like it's driven the influx in these unurban areas, or moving into these unurban areas as much as possible. I think people are kind of moving into these areas. That presents a huge challenge, I'm sure, for, firefighters and that sort of thing. But then just the amount of public land. I think that there's 193 million acres of public land to protect, that wildland firefighters protect from fire. There's over, I think annually, I heard somewhere around the tune that there's over 50,000 wildfires annually. Is that correct? I mean, do you know?
I mean, it fluctuates.
Yeah.
I'm sure Gabby would, if she goes to nifc.com or .fed or something, .gov, you can pull up the sit rep, and that will, that situation report, and that's published daily, and it'll show you an active list down there of like 10-year trends, 5-year trends, active fires this year, really? How many fires this year, acreage burned. It's pretty wild, yeah, but they keep pretty good track of it.
Say that one more time for me.
nifc.gov, nifc.gov, and look for the sit rep. And it should pull everything up there. But yeah, there's some little tools that people can use out there to see how many acres statistically have burned over the course of, X amount of years. And yeah, absolutely. It's trending only in one direction. And there's a good book out there that kind of spells it out Barney style in a it's not pseudoscience, it's scientific perspective, but it's called The Pyrocene by Stephen Prine. And if anybody's out there listening and want to see why we're getting into these more frequent, more intense, and more catastrophic wildland fires, well, he pretty spells it out. And you can't deny the fact that over the course of the recent history, I mean, shit, even in my very short career of 11 years, a big fire for me was probably like 80,000 to 100,000 acres, right? And now we're seeing like these gigafires and mega fires, but upwards of 1 million acres. I mean, think about that.
That is
like
insane.
Square mileage, man. That's insane.
That is so much land.
Yeah.
And how fast I mean, like some of those fires that, have happened up in Northern California and even around here, I mean, just like what we saw in Boulder, and that was just a grassland fire. That wasn't even a forest fire, but look at what that did, man. I mean,
well, look at what time of year it was.
It's
middle
crazy.
Of winter, man.
No, it was wild. And, there's really no coming back from that if you're in the middle of it, right? Like it's going to destruct everything in its path. It's along the lines of a tornado or something like that. As far as natural disasters go and rankings, like I think wildfire is probably one of the hardest ones, and I think it's the only one that we actually try to combat too. If you think about it that way, there's not guys out there digging a trench so a tornado goes down it, right? Like,
right.
Yeah. So to have people on the front lines, and like, how many people are in this community currently, and is it growing? able to keep numbers of firefighters? I mean, I would think that this isn't a job that everybody wants to do. I mean, I think it sounds super fucking cool, but I'm not out there, right? I got a podcast, I got a family, I got other things, I got, established career and that sort of thing. So, and I'm in my 40s, so I don't think I'm going to reinvent myself as a wildland firefighter. I mean, obviously, if it came down to it and that was the only choice, right? Or somebody really needed my help, yeah, I'd volunteer my service, but I'm probably not going to be the best teammate, right? So how many?
Not necessarily. You'd probably be surprised. I mean, I know plenty of like 50-year-olds out there that are still trugging along, digging line. I mean, typically they're in command and overhead positions at that time, but they're still out there crushing it, hiking up, billy goating up the sides of mountains, just with the young bucks. It's pretty cool.
How big is that community? I mean, do we have a count? I mean, we got to have some sort of count because people have to organize where those guys are going and what's happening. And
yeah, so I want to say you're roughly anywhere between, depending on what numbers you use. Now, if you're using municipal departments plus state plus private contractors plus federal resources and all the gambit of everybody who put foot in the black, right? You're probably looking upwards of 50,000 people. So, and that number fluctuates. And now, unfortunately, the feds are going to be dwindling in numbers. I want to say there's roughly 20,000 to 15 to 20,000 wildland firefighters employed by the federal agencies these days.
Wow.
And and those numbers are dwindling, and there's a reason for that, unfortunately. It wasn't until recently with the Biden administration, he signed a minimum wage first, which the organization Grassroots Wildland Firefighters had a great part in, and some other organizations as well, like NIFI, the NFFE, National Federation of Federal Employees. But he made a minimum wage set for $15 an hour. You cannot make less than $15 an hour. Now, the way federal wages work is they supersede state minimum wages. So if you're in Washington, per se, where the minimum wage is, what is it, $16 an hour or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you work for Uncle Sam and you're an entry-level wildland firefighter, you're a GS3 or a GS4. Now you're making like $13.25 to $14.25 an hour.
Really?
To risk your life. Yeah. And it wasn't until last year that was actually implemented. So, and it's been that way for forever, actually.
It's so
wages
backwards,
have not kept up.
Like, I mean, it shows that the men and women that are actually are out there doing it is obviously they're not doing it for the money, right? Because you could go to a trade school and pick up welding or something and make 6 to 8 times as much money, probably.
Oh, easy.
Right?
Easy.
And that's like a 6-month school or 7-month school or whatever it is. It might be longer than that, but still, I think that these people are pretty dedicated to helping people and helping the cause and being around, like-minded people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're, a generation of, and multiple generations of, professional outdoorsmen and women that love to hunt, fish, camp. They're stewards of the land, professional stewards of the land, right? And it wasn't until recently that there was actually the first time ever that Grassroots Wildland Firefighters actually made the advocacy and made those voices heard, because now we're getting these pay bumps for the next 2 years with the infrastructure bill, and Grassroots had a huge part in that.
That is super awesome. And you're one of the co-founders of that organization, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I'm one of the founding board members of the organization. We started it back about 3 years ago, and just been having our boots or our faces practically to the grindstone.
Yeah.
I mean, keeping our nose to the grindstone and just advocating for these men and women out there that are just getting their asses kicked every year for basically nothing. I mean, we have a saying in wildland firefighting. Yeah. It's like we don't get paid a lot of money, and there's a lot of misconceptions out there about how much money we actually make, but we get paid in sunsets. That's our inside joke. That's our cynicism and our dark humor that we use to cope with it. But I think there's a lot of misconceptions about you make overtime and you make hazard pay and stuff like that. And it's like, well, let's reel it back for a second, because you're only making overtime and hazard pay on unplanned and uncontained wildfires, and that's only 6 months out of the year, and a lot of this workforce is temporary, seasonal. So They don't get benefits in the off season. They don't pay into retirement. They don't get any special care or anything like that.
Wow.
They basically just like, all right, we'll see you next year. I'm like, okay, cool. Now they have to save all that money that they made from the wildland fire season over the winter, not starve to death, and then come back and do it all over again.
Yeah, no, it's something needs to be figured out. I'm glad that you guys are advocating for that, and we would like to help give you a platform or, fundraise or whatever we can do here at the Mountainside to help your guys' efforts in that. So you have an open line to me, Brandon. Just call me anytime, dude. I'm all about supporting that and supporting those people.
So there's a bill out there right now. It's called Tim's Act, and it's HR 5631. Gabby, you might have to fact check me on that one. Can't remember the name.
I'm on it now. Just can you spell that for me? Because I'm a bad speller.
Tim's Act. So it's the Tim Hart Wildland Firefighter Pay and Classification Parity Act. And that's going to be like the linchpin in taking this infrastructure pay bump, which is it's capped at $20,000. So basically, if you hit $20,000 in this pay bonus, this special pay stipend, if you will, you don't get any more. But it's 50% of your base pay that doesn't go into your retirement or your annuity or any of that retirement stuff, right? It's just like a pay stipend. So the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we have that 50% pay raise up to $20,000, whichever is less, right? That has an expiration date on it. It's only good for 2 years, and that money has a finite, expiration date. So Tim's Act, that's going to be what's carrying us through for actual longevity of getting more people in the woods and out and fighting fire and managing the land and all of this stuff. And it's no surprise that people are just falling off of the Federal Wildland Service in droves and going to, some municipal department or CAL FIRE or a state agency. It's because their quality of life and their pay is so much better. I don't know if you can make ends meet on $15 an hour, man, but
there's no way.
There's no freaking way, especially when a lot of these firefighters are in communities where the cost of living is just so exorbitantly high. I mean, we've had 24% inflation over the past 6 years. Yeah. It's like, you can't even afford to live. And the homelessness among wildland firefighters, federal wildland firefighters and contractors especially, a lot of these men and women are living out of their cars. And that is, there's like homeless veteran wildland firefighters out there who can't afford to live in certain areas because the cost of living is so damn high, and they make $16 an hour.
That's insane, man. That's not right. We got to figure out a way to mitigate that and make it better for them. But in turn, it's only going to be better for everybody. It's for the greater good, man, because not everybody's going to step up to the plate and, grab a pick or a shovel or one of your guys' special tools. I think the Pulaski or what? Pulaski, that's what it is. Yeah.
Ed Pulaski.
Shows my knowledge. And go running to fight a wildland fire. And not to mention, like we were just talking about, going into the terrain and you don't have water. You're not using respirators. You're not, there. It's really, you're going out there in some pretty common clothes, working around the clock, right? Or at least 16-hour shifts, something like that, which is pretty insane. If anybody's worked a 16-hour shift,
it's a long time.
And you're making as much as the guy at the fast food place, like, where's the incentive in that, right? The incentive is, like you said, it's in the sunsets, being around cool people, outdoors people. I think that there's some camaraderie there.
Oh yeah.
I would imagine. And, I think that that's why these people are really doing it, but it should be a win-win, right? They should be getting both out of that.
Oh yeah.
You should be getting paid well, and it's a high risk job. I mean, let's talk about their health. And, I want to go down the mental health road with you because I know you're a big advocate for that as well. And we certainly are here at this podcast as well, covering all kinds of different stuff from suicide just to mental wellness and, connecting with nature and how that's helped, and veteran communities battling with PTSD. And I know that you guys kind of deal with a lot of those same things. But first, my first question is, physical health, right? There's got to be injuries that happen out there. There's deaths that happen out there. These guys are cutting down trees. Everybody knows that logging is one of the most dangerous jobs in the world.
Yeah, try logging with a raging forest fire.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right on your ass.
Yep. So those are right along those lines. I mean, what is happening to these guys with smoke inhalation and some of those things? I mean, there's some long-term effects to breathing smoke all the time, I would imagine, right?
Oh yeah, and there's she's a researcher that works for NIOSH and the CDC. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say her name or if I can, but she's pretty publicly well known about her research. But her name is Dr. Kat Navarro. Speaking of a Redmond alumni, she was on Redmond Hotshots as well. And she's doing pretty much the Lord's work as far as actually researching the health impacts that these particulate matters have on the human body, especially when, if you look at it from a risk mitigation kind of factor, right? You have your high risk, high probability of injury, high probability of exposure and duration. Like, we're going to put that on a scale, right? So when you look at a structure firefighter, they have turnouts, they have SCBAs, they have all this PPE, they have protocols for like decontamination and all that stuff, right? Cool. High risk, but they're mitigating it so that risk is now moderate, but their exposure time is very, very short, right? I mean, how many working active structure fires does an average municipal firefighter go on per year? Yeah, it's some super hyper toxic shit, but they're pretty well protected. And yes, it's not safe. It's not a fail safe to say that PPE is going to protect you from all this stuff. But
it's a much more oiled machine when it comes to the actual protocols, right? And that sort of thing.
There's research on it too, right? We know that this shit causes cancer. If you're a structure firefighter, your, I guess, occurrence of cardiovascular disease, lung disease, prostate cancer, testicular cancer, ovarian cancer for the women, it goes fucking through the roof over X amount of years, right? So now what they're finding out, because there's never been any research with this wildland firefighting side of the house, is that this shit is super toxic, but it's not as toxic as a house fire or a car fire or a structure fire, right? However, the exposure is way, way, way up there. So you're constantly socked in with smoke. You're sitting in an inversion layer where the smoke settles down into a valley and you're camping out there in the dirt. That's another thing too. Mm-hmm. The silicates, that's really what's fucking us up. So I don't know if you've seen dozer line.
So would the silicates, would that be like ash and it'd like be some of those particles?
It'd be sand. It'd be
dust. Yeah.
Yeah. Dust is a huge one, right? Well,
also, I mean, something to consider, a lot of times in a lot of these fires, there's structures that are burning too, and you guys are trying to save those structures. So you're just as close as a structure firefighter is, although a lot of these guys, maybe on some of those engine companies, you guys have respirators and stuff like that.
Maybe an R5, but no one's going to wear them because we're not dedicated structure firefighters, right?
Right.
We're wildland. That's our mission. We protect the home before it catches on fire. That's our ideal state, right?
Right.
But still, you have structure loss, especially in the wildland urban interface, like your neck of the woods, right?
Mm-hmm.
All these cities are growing and they're ballooning out into the woods, and that's where you get that wildland urban interface. So now it's becoming compounded, these health risks, because people are moving out into the woods. These fires start typically in remote areas, or humans start right next to the road, typically, or an escaped campfire near a community in the forest, right? So now you have all these structures burning around you. Not to mention that, but you have illegal dumping. You have cars that have been abandoned. You have shit. I mean, I fought fire in places where like there's fucking asbestos in the ground, just naturally occurring asbestos.
Like somebody buried it there or something, huh? Or?
No, it's just naturally occurring. It's a naturally occurring mineral. So you have all this stuff that's compounded, and then it's getting kicked up by like the 20 people that are in front of you if you're at the ass end of the line, right?
Right.
Or a dozer comes ripping by, and you're going to take the path of least resistance. You're going to hike that dozer line, but once a dozer comes through and disturbs the ground, you have this like very poof dirt kind of like silicate that's just a dust storm, right? And you're wearing this shit constantly. Not to mention like if you're dealing with chemicals, like you're fueling your saw. So you're fueling your saw, you got bar oil, you got all these like just day-to-day operational chemicals on you, and it's like you're wearing the same fucking pants for like 2 weeks, and there's not a wildland firefighter out there that
and you're not
probably
going back
washes
to a
their yellow.
hotel room and taking a shower, right? Like you
No,
guys are
you're
going to
stuck
a
out
tent
there in the
or
dirt.
something, right? Or
Yeah,
whatever. Maybe not even a tent.
No, you usually just, throw your sleeping pad out on top of your footprint and throw your sleeping bag on top of it and crash out until you have to wake up, right?
Right.
And you just do that day in, day out. You don't shower. It's not like you have laundry services, but 9 times out of 10, they're going to lose your shit at a major fire camp. But a lot of these fire camps, you're in remote places, and you're like in spike camp out way far away from like the main fire camp, and the diet's poor. I mean, you're eating just total dog
MREs
shit,
and that
MREs,
sort of type of stuff,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
whatever gas station food that you can find and shovel down. And it's just a high stress, low rest, very poor diet, and you're just breathing in all these chemicals, and it's all just a compounding factor into our health. I mean, we have, I believe Kat's page, we have a 73% increase of cardiovascular disease and like a 53% increase in cancers.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd have to pull up the facts there, but I know it was astronomically high. And the thing that sucks about that is with wildland firefighters, you don't have presumptive coverage until just recently. We're trying to push that through Congress right now with Grassroots and the National Federation of Federal Employees as well. We're trying to push that through Congress, and I believe it passed. But up until recently, you didn't have these pay benefits. You didn't have these mental health coverages. OWCP, I'm just going to say it fucking sucks. I don't work for Uncle Sam anymore, so I'm at liberty to say whatever my opinion is. So OWCP is like Office of Workmen's Comps, right? Now, if you're, say, you get rhabdomyolysis on the fire line, and you go and try and prove that your occupation caused this injury, which is very common, right? And it's deadly. It can be potentially deadly. Well, now you got to prove this to OWCP to cover your claim, and they're just like an insurance company at times. They're just kind of a reason to deny you. And it sucks because these people are walking away after they've dedicated their lives to this public service, and they're just fucking riddled with cancer. They are alcoholics because they're so fucking stressed and they're self-medicated. They're going through their first or second divorce. They might have cancer, and they are indebted up to their eyeballs with medical bills. Like, dude, it sucks, man.
That's yeah, something's got to be done about that for sure. And I think
this bill that you had has lots of things about all the benefits that you guys are going to get. Bobby, I'll send this over to you, but like
perfect.
The benefits, having, just a few weeks off to do mental health and everything. I mean, I could sit and read this forever, but it sounds like you guys have some good things coming your way, just benefit wise. Like, people are actually recognizing that. Bobby, I'll screenshot that and send it to you.
That'd be great, Gabby. We'll lace it over there. Can you maybe just highlight some of those things? Let's go ahead and bring it up so people know what it's doing, if you wouldn't mind, Gabby.
Yeah, do you want me to start reading some of those, or just
breeze through them? And
yeah, of course.
Yep.
So it says provide 1 week of mental health leave off of wildfire firefighters. Wow. Providing housing stipends, tuition. We have benefits for temporary seasonal employments for at least 10 years of service, saying about the pay raise, at least 20 an hour, providing healthcare and mental health services, just all types of great stuff. Hopefully that will be happening soon.
That's incredible. That's what needs to happen. I mean, hands down.
100%, dude.
Like I said, I have mad respect for these people, and everyone that I've talked to that's in that line of work are just, they're cool motherfuckers, man. They're people I want to hang out with. Like, for the most part. I'm sure that there's a few loose cannons out there, there isn't everything,
course.
but I think that, as much as they put their life on the line and going into some of these situations, and I know that, a lot of times these guys are playing it safe, but also they're a first responder. They're running into a wildland firefighter, and I'm not knocking regular firefighters by any means. I have mad respect for those guys too, but they should have some of the same benefits and some of the same luxuries as those guys have, I think,
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that, they are professionals. They're both professionals, right? However, there are two wildly different subjects, right? So a lot of times you'll talk to a municipal wildland fire or municipal firefighter, structured firefighter, and they'll say a lot of the times that they wouldn't be caught dead running into a forest fire. However, you talk to the wildland side of that, and they wouldn't be caught dead running into a structure fire.
Yeah.
So it's funny, but they're two different, I guess, theaters of warfare, if you will, right? And they are very specific. Like the wildland firefighters, they know how to do it best, and they have all of this training. They have a very hard-earned pedigree of what to do and not to do in the wildland realm. Same thing with structure, right? They got the same thing going on for them. They're two separate, different things, and I don't think you should really necessarily cross those. I think they should be separate. Just let the professionals focus on what they do, right? Yeah, do we need the structure side assistance? Of course we do. Yeah, we just need the numbers, right? Now, it doesn't work the other way. However, I guess what I'm getting at is if you start wearing too many hats, you start losing your expertise, right?
Yeah,
it can become dangerous.
Proficient at one sort of trade, right? So the more you practice one thing, like that's why I'm an archery hunter, not a bird hunter, not a, like we were talking about before. You got to pick and choose.
Yeah.
What you're going to do, I guess, type of thing. And I think the more time that you spend training in those specific applications, it's only going to make you more professional, right? I mean, that's what pro athletes do,
Yeah.
Pro football players don't go and practice baseball a couple times
gymnast
a week
is not going to be dunking on people.
A diamond, right? Like, it's not what they do. It's just, I mean, maybe for fun, unless you're Barry Bonds or something, but that was like an 80s, like, publicity stunt, almost, you know what I mean? So, not that he wasn't an amazing athlete or anything like that, but it's just like, I totally get where you're coming with that. So, diving back into wildland firefighting assets, there's so many different, and training for certain things, there's so many different applications that we kind of went over, like at the beginning, you've worked in a bunch of those different applications. I guess, can we just run through those real quick so people can understand how many different things, like you guys have full-on catering companies out there at the base camps and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. You mentioned laundry earlier, right? There's a whole little city and infrastructure tent city that gets set up, and not a homeless tent city. Like, I'm talking about firefighters and basically camping out, and then the infrastructure to get guys to where they need to go to fight the fire, whether it's, air support or engines and that sort of thing. Can we just kind of run through like all the people that are involved and some of the different roles, or is that too long of a list?
No, I could probably break it down pretty simply. Just catch me if I'm rambling. Yeah. So you're managing chaos, and whenever you have to manage chaos, there's a lot of shit that goes into it, right? So we adopt a lot of our SOPs from the military, right? So if you were to centralize it around a fire camp, right? All of you, say you got a big gnarly fire going and you need a lot of resources. Well, you need the infrastructure to support those resources. So back at camp, you'll have, your sleeping area, you'll have a supply tent, like a supply area where people can get refurbished on gear, chain, fuel, whatever, MREs. You'll have a food unit because you got to feed these folks. They're going through 6,000 calories a day out there on the line. So we have a catering service, and that's typically a third-party contractor. And we usually try and hire local is usually what it is. It's not like a specific caterer is tied to a fire management team. Gotcha. It's whatever local resource is available and has the capacity to feed all these folks, right? Then we have communications, right? You have a communications trailer out there. It's basically a trailer with a shit ton of radios, spare radios, batteries, like programming cords, all that stuff to get any broken radio fixed or spare repeaters set up or any of that stuff. Because communication,
Oh, it's key in this, right?
It's key.
Save your life or kill you, one or the other,
100%, right? Wars are won on logistics and communication, right?
Strategy,
right? Strategy has to be made up, usually on the fly. So you have your communications, they handle all the comm stuff, right? Then you have your med unit as well. So if in case somebody gets hurt or you need an ouchie boo-boo kit or some Motrin and need to go suck it up or talk to somebody, you have that, right? And blisters are a thing. They oftentimes
I'm sure.
put down firefighters. Like I've seen people's entire feet just like peeled off. Like it's Jesus, man, gnarly blisters.
Yeah.
So you get your med unit and they, patch people up and get them definitive care. You have your command now as well. I mean, you have your command. So that's going to be your plans, your logistics coordinator, your comms unit leader, your incident commander, your deputy IC, all the people that are making like the top brass decisions and strategizing on how to attack this fire, and then also coordinating all this chaos that's just going around in camp. So you need a lot of people just to get there.
There's a meteorologist that's typically on one of these too, right? At the same time, or multiple sometimes.
Sometimes there's multiple, and even sometimes these camps are broken up into what's called branches, right? So you'll have multiple huge fire camps spread out over a wide area, managing one fire or a complex of fires at once, but they all have to coordinate with each other. It's pretty insane, man. So that meteorologist, he's called an IMET. You have a fire behavior analysis team at FBAN. So they'll tie in with weather and tie in with like what the topography is. They'll tie in with what the fuel loading is there. They'll read off your ERCs, your energy release component. That's like the potential of like how much energy is going to be released from a specific area. They'll tie that into the weather. They'll tie that into the winds. They'll tie that into terrain, and they'll basically tell you what the fire is going to do for that operational shift, and probably like 2 or 3 days out. So you got
a lot
of
moving parts, and we're not even getting to the actual guys going out on the line.
Nope, not even.
Yeah.
Then you got your admin side of the house, the people in finance, the people that are like doing ordering for more resources, those kind of folks. So that's just like the central like structure around a major wildfire, right? I'm probably forgetting a couple things, but that's the premise. Now, when you have resources coming in, you have dozers, you have multiple types of engines coming in. You have structure protection groups. You have hotshots. You have helicopters because they're going to be doing the logistics stuff,
air traffic stuff, right?
Yeah,
just that.
Oh yeah. You'll have a heli base out there, and they'll be coordinating with, the deck coordinator and like logistics and all that stuff, and they'll get orders from the field for people out at spike camp, the people that are out in like the furthest points of the fire. They're basically just camping out there for however long it takes, getting food flown into them, supplies flown into them, and stuff like that with sling load. So sling load, for those who don't know what that is, it's like basically a cargo net attached to a 100-yard or 100-foot freaking cable to a belly hook on a helicopter.
I got to ask this question too. You keep bringing up being in the black. Does that mean being in the burn line basically?
Yes.
Or okay, cool. And that's basically where you want to be, right? Because the fire typically won't come back there.
Yeah, there's nothing to burn if it's already burned, right? So always keep your feet in the black. That's always a good safety measure. Yeah. And anyways, so we got the people out at spike camp. That's typically your hotshots and helitackers, and sometimes some engine crews. Yeah, dude, the list goes on and on and on. I mean, if it was jumped by smoke jumpers, they'll establish initial command, and then they'll pass that off until the next highest level of management structure. And then they'll probably plug into like a division where they're in charge of a division of a fire.
Wow.
Yeah, dude.
I just kind of wanted to showcase like how much actually goes into it, how many people are involved, how many moving parts, and a lot of it is prediction and and some hope, right?
Oh yeah. There's even a national like coordinating group who dictate where resources go, what fires are priority, just depending on like what's threatened, the values at risk, any like if there's like unfortunately if there's a fatality, there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
I'm curious, how many do you happen to know these numbers? Like, and we can have Gabby look these up too, but like how many hotshots or just firefighters in general lose their lives to wildfire on average a year? I mean, I'm sure it's increasing with the increase in fires, right? Because some of these guys are gone 200 days of the year or more, you know, on fire lines and stuff.
It's really hard to put a number to how many wildland firefighters actually perish in the line of duty every year. Every year there is a official statistic and number put out. Obviously, there's bigger years like 1994 with South Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of firefighters died on that fire, unfortunately. There was, 2013 with Granite Mountain. Yeah, 19 people. One incident. One fire. 19 people lost their lives in the line of duty. But we don't see is what happens in the off season. And that is stemming back to the mental health thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have a very stressful, very underpaid, very chaotic and repetitive trauma styled career, right? So all these little traumas add up into what's called complex PTSI. There's point of injury, basically. There's like trauma-based PTSD. It's called PTSI now, so post-traumatic stress injury. It's not a disorder. You could fix it. So they're calling it PTSI now. There's traumatic single event PTSI, and then there's complex. And a lot of the firefighters that are out there these days, they're shouldering a lot of burden. In fact, I just recently lost one of my friends just recently. So yeah, it's
sorry, man.
It's hard, dude. There's a lot of people that pass away that are not on the line of duty, and that's the numbers that I'm really curious to see because there's no record of that.
And that seems to be a trend, whether it's in the military or not. I mean, whether it's through suicide or through, previous injuries or all that sort of stuff, man. I think that, you can't really put a number or face to it. Is there some, foundations out there? Because you also got to think behind each one of these guys, there's typically a family, right? Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
a struggling one typically.
Yeah. Right. Because they're not making a lot of money. I'm sure that is there any sort of support for them, or is there anything or are they just high and dry at that point?
There's a couple of organizations out there that come to mind. You've got a lot of support for. In fact, primarily what the Wildland Firefighter Foundation does is support the families of fallen wildland firefighters out there. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're fed, state, municipal, like private contractors. They even do international, man, and they're an international organization now, and that's what they do. And if you ever get a chance to go through Boise, Idaho, it's over by the airport, go to the Wildland Firefighter Foundation and see all the pictures that are lining the inside of that building, and you'll be blown away.
Really?
Yeah. They're the primary, go-to tragedy response group out there. There's really nobody else in the game. As far as the mental health component, they do assist with the mental health component as well. It's not necessarily their specialty, but they do a shit ton of work with referrals, getting people to culturally competent clinicians. They get people into alcohol and drug cessation programs. They do a lot of stuff. A lot of good comes out of that organization, and they're pretty much the only game in town with their federal, or not the federal, but their wildland firefighter outreach programs and support programs.
But
Another
that's
one
all
out
a
there,
nonprofit, volunteer type based organization, right? Like, there's nothing that the federal government's doing, or that, these state governments or Forest Service or anything like that. There's no support, and that's disheartening.
The state and the municipal folks, they have a lot more support than the feds and possibly the private contractor world. Some of the, it's just like with any crew, a lot of the private contractors out there, some are better than others, and they provide a lot of support. But some of them, it's kind of a free-for-all, very capitalistic kind of setup. And they don't really support their wildland firefighters. Some of them don't. It's unfortunate and it sucks, but that's just the way big business goes.
If somebody's listening to this thing right now, and I'm discouraged at the moment, and I didn't mean to make this a dreary podcast, but I'm also glad that we're talking about this sort of stuff.
It's the elephant in the room, man. It needs to be, all of this shit needs to be talked about.
Yeah, and I'd be glad to be a platform for any of you guys anytime, with our audience here. If somebody's listening to this right now and they're encouraged to try to do something or try to help, where would you suggest sending them to try, if it's a donation, if it's maybe they want to volunteer some time, do you have some organizations that you have in mind that you would send them to? I mean, obviously what you're doing with is it Grassland Roots? I don't want to screw it up.
Grassroots Wildland Firefighters.
Yeah. Is amazing from the legislative side, right? Because that in turn is helping with a lot of this, but I know that there's some other foundations out there. I know that you work with some closely with your podcast and that sort of thing. Where can people go to help, or where do you, because here's the problem with a lot of the veteran stuff that I've helped support is I really have to vet them and see where the money's going, right? Like that's a huge thing before you just like shell your money out to some nonprofit. Like you can go and publicly check the books. You can go and see where the money's going. And that's the point of a nonprofit. So I think that's important too, whether we're giving you the suggestion or not. Definitely go and check it out and see what it's all about and figure out where that money's actually going before you.
Yeah, and there's plenty of resources out there to kind of vet who your, I guess your nonprofit of choice is, right? So there's GuideStar. There's another one, I think it's like Platinum Star or something. No, GuideStar does the platinum rating. There's another nonprofit guidebook out there that gives ratings, right? So GuideStar is always a good one. And then also, I believe it's any nonprofit that's taken in over $50,000 in donations a year, they have to publicly post their 990s. And that's right. That's another thing too, because somewhere I guarantee you on that website, I'm pretty sure
when you start seeing
administrative
fee after administrative fee, that's a red flag right there.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're, supporting Bob Barker neutering pets across the country or whatever, right? Like,
let's look at the Red Cross, right?
Every place is going to have some administrative fees, right? Like,
this shit's not free. It takes money to pay people to do their jobs. But the
writing's on the wall. You have common sense, right? So I'm sure people can figure it out. But I guess from the wildland firefighter standpoint, or these men and women, where is the money going the furthest, and how can they help support, or, even if it's not, maybe people don't have money right now. I mean, everybody's kind of hurting right now with the way that the economy's kind of going and stuff. Is there certain things that you can do if you're in a community and there's wildland firefighters, out in your community? Or, I mean, can you bring them a plate of cookies? Can you,
Yeah, man. Let's start with the nonprofit side of the house. I got 4 in mind, right? That are, I work closely with all 4 of these nonprofits, and they're legit. So you got the Wildland Firefighter Foundation. They're going to be supporting your families, your fallen or your injured and fallen wildland firefighters and their families internationally. Fucking legit. They're great people.
I've heard of them before. Huge. They do a lot, and they do whatever it takes, right? And I don't think that they take federal money specifically. I remember this, so they can do whatever they want. So
they can do whatever the hell they want.
It's strictly on donation. So like if somebody's kid needs a surgery and they were relying on the dad's money, they can turn around and pay for that, or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about helping the families, right?
Let's put shit into perspective here. So that Tim Hart Wildland Firefighter Pay Parity and Classification Act, the widow of Tim Hart, Michelle Hart, who is a part of Grassroots, she has done amazing fucking work for the legislative side. She was a lobbyist professionally in her actual day job, and her husband was a smoke jumper, Tim Hart, right? When he passed away, the Wildland Firefighter Foundation personally flew down there, made sure shit was dialed in. They helped her with all of the paperwork, and they even paid for flights. They fucking do so much, and that's just one story. It's a very large, high-profile story, right? But they do that for thousands of people. They're an incredible organization. Another nonprofit. So let me be specific with my wording here. Grassroots Wildland Firefighter Foundation, right? Or Grassroots Wildland Firefighters. They're an advocacy group, and they are a nonprofit technically. However, we're in the process of getting our waiting period for the IRS and our official 501c status through the IRS. They're a legit organization. They can take donations right now, but we're limited on to what we can do. And all that money, currently it's going back into building the organization flying people to DC, helping with advocacy on Capitol Hill. It's a legit organization, and it is truly a grassroots measure, right? So hopefully this damn 501c3 status will be official through the IRS here soon. So if you want to go for the advocacy route, by all means, hit up Grassroots, volunteer, donate, help them out. Same thing with Wildland Firefighter Foundation. For mental health, I'm going to throw out Next Rung, right? And they primarily specialize in like the municipal and structure side of things, but they are dabbling in the wildland firefighter realm, and they're awesome. They do referral services. Sometimes they pay for all that stuff like mental health services, getting culturally competent clinicians, alcohol and drug cessation, suicide awareness. It's a fucking great organization. And Charlie over there, man, he is a solid dude. He's awesome. And then last but not least, Sons of the Flag. They are a burn organization, and they're great. One of my buddies, now buddies, he got burned in a hot spring trying to rescue his dogs. Unfortunately, his dogs passed away, but he was burned quite severely over, I want to say 75% of his body.
In hot water?
Yeah.
Wow.
That dude's a stud, man. He risked his own life to go in there and save the two dogs that he loved, man. And unfortunately, it didn't work out, and he was very severely injured. But yeah, Sons of the Flag, they showed up at the hospital that he was at, and they supported him, man. It was cool. They're great fucking people, man. So
well, that's awesome. It's good to hear that there's some organizations out there at least that are helping with picking up the slack on some of these things, right?
Yeah. And if you just want to like, and the personal side, if you want to like interact directly with firefighters, and if there's a major wildland fire in your town, I mean, we don't need socks. We don't need underwear. We don't need water, Gatorade, or any of that stuff, right? That's all taken care of. We got that stuff. You know, the biggest thing is just say thank you. We don't need meals. We don't need cookies. I mean, yeah, it's a very kind gesture to, you know, buy the wildland firefighter who's standing next to you at the coffee shop a coffee. It's very kind, but just ask them how they are.
Sure.
Say hi, introduce yourself, say thank you. That's all you got to do.
And I think sometimes not to be so critical, right? Like I've seen it firsthand in these communities, you know, like today, and it's a stressful situation if you're a resident in the area. You know, the news helicopters are there before anybody, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so it looks like there's really not a lot going on because it's on the freaking side of a mountain. And, you know, the people automatically jump to the conclusion that, like, it's not a fast enough response time and that sort of stuff, right? Like, so I think not being as critical on that end of things, too, that obviously you guys are doing whatever you can to mitigate that fire as fast as you can, right?
Yeah, and these things take time. I mean, this is an organizational structure. It's a paramilitary organization, but there's also rules of engagement, right? We can't just like willy-nilly go out and start, you know, freelancing. That's how people get hurt or killed. And for the people that are out there basically armchair quarterbacking it from their couch, the comfort and safety of their own home, well, it's real easy to do that from the comfort and safety of your own home. You're no different than a keyboard warrior. If you want to sit there and talk shit to a job that, one, you don't understand, and two, probably even couldn't physically perform, well, you probably should be picking your battles somewhere else. And I'll stand by that every fucking day of my life.
I love that. I will too, man. I'm right behind you.
But yeah, man.
I think another way that people can help too is just being conscious. You know, obviously,
there we go.
If you're in a wildland fire zone or area or a potential place where it can happen, shit, you can be in suburbia and Boulder living in a grassland, right? There's some certain things that you can do because, number one, you're going to be putting firefighters at risk if they're trying to save your house because you have stupidly not mitigated anything. You haven't cleaned the pine needles off your roof. You haven't cut trees that are, you know, overgrown in your property. You haven't mowed your grass. There's a lot of things. And I think that there's, with this influx of inner city people moving into the mountains, they're starting to do things like put up fences everywhere, right? Yep. To me, that's a burn line straight to your house. Especially if it's old or it's got some stain on it, right? Like that wood is typically pretty dry, right? Like Colorado's pretty dry. And, I don't know about that. I'm not an expert in any of this.
Well, it's
but
usually the stuff that's like stacked up against the side of the fence. If there's like
Right.
a bunch of like sagebrush or juniper or fucking tree, pine needles, duff stacked up against it, that's what's going to ignite it, because you need a finer fuel to ignite bigger fuel and so on and so forth, right? Is an escalation, right? So clear that shit out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that helps you guys be able to get in and move around some of these mountain communities. I know Colorado Parks and Wildlife is working extensively with realtors here to kind of, adjust people that maybe are moving from the inner city of Chicago or New York or whatever to like, hey, you don't have to put up a privacy fence around your entire property here because you're on 2 acres or you're on 1.5 acres, because those are migration patterns for animals. Also, if we do get into wildland fire type situation, trucks might need to drive through there. They're going to drive through your fence. Yeah.
Yeah, we will get through it.
But still, it's another obstruction, right? It's another thing. It's more fuel, that sort of thing. And I don't mean to rely on fences, but what I'm getting at here is, as far as fire mitigation goes, what are some of the most common things that you guys run into that are a huge hurdle when it comes to where structures meets wilderness, or even in the wilderness? I think, people sometimes do some stupid shit out there too.
100%, man. And I'm going to take back what I said earlier about saying thank you to a firefighter. If you really want to thank a firefighter, a wildland firefighter, let's take some proactive measures to, one, being, I guess, accountable for your property. That'd be nice. That's like a super helpful thing, right? So, hey, if we interact with you, where's your gas shut off, right? Where is your septic tank? Is this one way in, one way out? Is there any special hazards? Do you have like 16,000 rounds of 5.56 in the shed out there? Do you have reloading equipment? Do you have this, that, the other? Like, what are our hazards? Tell us that stuff if we make interaction face-to-face with you guys. That's a big one, right? Another thing is being proactive with your defensible space, right? Understand what it means to be a participant in a Firewise community, because that's going to be a huge thing, right? Clear out your pine needles and stuff. I mean, use fire-resistant ornamental plants around your structure. Clear out your fucking gutters of pine needles. Clear out the eaves of pine needles. Screen your roof vents with a fine mesh, a fireproof fine steel mesh. Do simple things. Clear out all the crap underneath your deck. Clear off the fucking wood that you're using in your fireplace from your deck. Clear anything that could potentially catch an ember, because it takes one. It only takes one. And by the time your house is engulfed and we see smoke, or let alone fire coming out of your house, we are not prepared and not equipped to fight a structure fire. We're there for a wildland fire.
Right. Now, it's gone at that point, right?
It's gone. Once it's a quarter involved, not even a quarter, probably like an eighth involved, we can't do shit. We don't have enough water. We don't have enough resources. We don't have the PPE. We're putting ourselves at much more hazard. Another simple things is with someone's, like, when the emergency broadcast system comes over the radio and they tell you to evacuate, take it seriously.
Get the fuck out.
These fires, get the fuck out. I mean, no home is worth losing your life over.
Sure.
Homes have insurance. You know what's irreplaceable? Your life.
Yeah.
We
have these great fire boxes at home too. You can lock your stuff up in a fire safe. It's not guaranteed, but we have, important shit in there. Some family heirlooms, some, a few photos. There's, photos that can't be recreated. I guess they can now in the digital age, right? You can take a picture with your iPhone or whatever, but certain stuff like that, like birth certificates, like those documents that are hard to replace, social security cards, all that is in they make these fire safes, and they're fairly inexpensive, right?
Yeah.
So, but also it's easy to grab. It's like a big briefcase, right? So, and pay attention, like with this wildfire that's going on. I said it right before the podcast, like, hey, if I got to go bail my grandparents out, I'm going to jump out of here right away, right? Because they're in their 80s. I haven't heard nothing yet. I haven't checked the status of this thing, but I would imagine I would be getting all kinds of phone calls. So I'm sure that they're okay. preemptively, if there's a fire in your area or close to it, I think it's good to have some of those things packed up and to have an actual plan.
100%, dude.
A lot of times what happens in these fires as well, like with the Paradise, California, I think is where a bunch of those people got pinned down. There's only one way in, one way out, right?
And that is a dangerous
have
place
another
for everybody.
exit plan, right? Maybe it's a side by side. Maybe it's something else. And leave
Maybe
your
it's
shit
the most
behind.
defensible structure in your town. I mean, even look at the Dixie Fire last year with Greenville. Greenville got slicked off the map. There was nothing you could have done to stop this. You could throw all the aviation resources at it, all the hotshot crews, all of the retardant drops. You can do all of that, and it's not going to stop. I'm sorry. Get out. Have a plan.
And this is something that I've always done. Like when we got evacuated last year, I have lawnmowers. I got a freaking snowblower. I got a couple gas cans. I got propane bottles for the camper. So what I did is I went and took it and put it all kind of at the end of my driveway, the furthest away from homes, trees, that sort of thing. So if it were to combust and not too close to the road in case there was a truck driving by or something, like, what do you want people to do with that sort of shit? Because if you leave that in your house or in your garage, maybe your garage, luckily my garage is detached, but still there's a good chance that all that flammable shit could be a real issue, right? And especially for you guys.
Yeah, it could definitely be a real issue. And, I mean, it's not like if we're doing structure protection on your property, it's not like we're going to be rummaging through your shit. It's not our job. It's not our MO.
Right.
We don't care what you do. We don't care if you have 10-foot tall marijuana plants in your backyard. We don't give a shit. That's your livelihood. We're going to respect it and we're going to defend it as long as it is defendable. We do structured triage. So if there's undefensible, you can prep and go. You can't stay there though. And then there's standalone defensible, right? Where this house has like a 99% chance of survival. As for the hazmat shit that's in your house, put it off to the side. I mean, propane bottles, they have vents. They don't explode like fucking JDAM bombs.
Not Hollywood shit.
Yeah, it's not Hollywood. It doesn't work like that. I mean, gas cans, what they'll do is they'll off gas, they'll shoot out a little bit, then it'll boil, then it'll melt, and then it'll just have a river of fire going down wherever the vapors are going, the liquid is going, right? So that stuff really doesn't concern us. And if we see a hazard, we're going to move it. The biggest hazards that we encounter are going to be animals primarily. So if you have the ability to get your horses or your dogs or all that shit out, by all means do that. That's part of your livelihood. Get them out along with your irreplaceable personal objects. The rest of the shit has insurance. Get the fuck out. We can't replace your life. As far as the hazmat stuff, yeah, if you want to put it at the end of your driveway, as long as it's not impeding access to your home, cool. That's great, man. As long as it's not going to catch fire and create more problems.
I just wasn't sure if that was something you should just leave put or if you should try to get it all contained into one thing or like, I don't know. I think that's something that everybody kind of needs to consider a little bit too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Electrical hazards, that's going to be another one. Heavy objects or heavy vehicles like dozers or engines or whatever. Collapsing a septic tank, that's a big one. So if we make interaction with you,
a lot of those are plastic, right? Or
usually concrete, but they're pretty discernible. Usually you could see some telltale signs like a leach field or like some growth where you wouldn't think it'd be growing,
Right.
So it was fertile poo water, feeding all these weeds and shit. So, and also you have septic service accesses as well, like the plastic vents or whatever sticking up. So usually we can spot those, but sometimes we can't. Electrical hazards, if we have any like low-lying electrical lines, typically 99% of the time the power will be off to your structure, which poses another problem for us, right? If you're on a well or if you are on you have your sprinklers running or whatever, that's all fine and dandy, but that's reliant on electricity, right? Your well is not going to pump unless you have power going to it. So yeah, stuff like that. If you have like a kiddie pool or a something that you could fill a large amount. If you have a pool, even an above ground or in ground pool, leave that fucker full, man. We're going to use that water.
All right. Yeah. No, our house is specifically on a well. And if the power goes out, I mean, we have a generator, but still, it's like it's a pain in the ass because there's a whole pressure tank. So you might only have pressure for 10 minutes, right? And then as soon as that pressure tank's out, there's no water pressure. So you can't do shit with that water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the basics of it. I mean, I'm sorry if you have a rotten deck that hasn't been like sanded down and refinished in ages. If it's got like splinters and shit coming up, that's just a prime like ember catching material. I have this thing called a chainsaw. Times we're gonna cut your fucking deck off of your own house, and that's just to save the rest of the structure, because the rest of the structure might be, you know, has asphalt shingles. There's another thing too. If a homeowner out there has wood shake shingles, for God's sakes, get rid of those damn things and put either asphalt shingles or steel roof on there, because those things are just poisonous. Clear the fucking brush away. Just be proactive about what you're doing with your defensible space. That's how you think as firefighter.
That makes a lot of sense. Sorry, we lost the camera here for
I heard
a minute.
the famous GoPro beep.
I think it overheated all this fire talk. It started getting nervous. Let's also dive into, on the legislative side and stuff like that, some forest management, right? I think that's another big reason why we're having some of these catastrophic record-setting fires is there hasn't been much. It's a culmination of a lot of different things. One, the environment, right? It's getting warmer. We're in a drought. Then you have, you know, an insect problem, invasive species that are killing trees, that sort of thing. We just saw that happen up here in Grand Lake. I mean, a beautiful, incredible natural lake that is the headwater of the Colorado River, and the entire mountainside was dead. And then it just burned last year, right? So
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's just fuel for the fire. I know that, you know, locally here in where I'm at, because of the population, we now have some full-time wildland guys, and when they're not fighting a fire, they're cleaning, you know, cutting down trees and cleaning up undergrowth and you know, all that sort of stuff. And you either see them running around with their truck going to fight a fire, or typically there's a wood chipper, you know, tied to the back of it, which is pretty cool. So, you know, taking some of those steps, but what are your thoughts on that, and, you know, some better ways to manage that or to do it from a personal standpoint?
Let's take it back to that conversation about the pyrocene and Stephen Prine, right? He really spells it out in that, as well as like, as far as like trending fire environments, right? We're getting more frequent, bigger, hotter, drier, all that stuff. Now, yeah, I know this is a very politicized subject, but if you look at the data, fire behavior is only trending one direction, and that's fucking up. And there's a multitude of reasons for that, right? So for those folks of you that are out there listening that don't believe in climate change, which I respect your view, but from a firsthand account, I think it's kind of bullshit. Sorry. Love to hate me, hate to love me, whatever. I don't care. It's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. You're entitled to yours. If you don't believe in climate change, that's fine. So let's take that hot button topic out of the equation. Just start on neutral ground here, sans the climate change dilemma, right? So we've had a history of the 10 a.m. policy with the Forest Service and most land management agencies, and that's been around for a long time, right? Far before you and me were even born, probably even put together. So the whole premise behind that was the Forest Service created a policy to where if they initially attack a emerging wildfire, well, the goal, the object of the game back then and up until recently was to put this fire out by 10 a.m. the next day. Fire is a natural, it's a very natural part of our environment, right? Human species would not have evolved unless it was alongside fire. And a lot of ecosystems are fire dependent, and a lot of, I guess, species out there have become fire dependent as well. I mean, if you look at the hunting realm.
I mean, you guys fight fire with fire. I mean, sometimes it's prescribed burns and stuff to get rid of some of these fuels. Sometimes it's lighting is it a backline? Is that what you guys call it?
A backfire, a burn operation.
Backfire.
There's a lot of colloquialisms there. So, But that's the thing, though, is like we've set ourselves up for failure as far as removing that natural component of natural caused good fire from the environment, right? And if you look at it even from a hunting perspective, I mean, if you're where's like one of the best places to hunt? On the edge of a bird scar, right?
God, and the deadfall.
Edge of a burn scar.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, the burn areas are fucking
because you got all this new growth.
It's because there's a bunch of fresh vegetation in there. It's nutrient. They're not having to dig to get to it. There's, and then typically on that line, there's a bunch of deadfall,
cover, right?
You know?
Shelter, food, right next door to each other, and
Yep.
probably water not too far away. So if you think of it that way, that's good fire, right? Now, when you see these completely decimated landscapes where the fire has basically raged so intensely that it sterilizes the soil, it takes away and burns away all those nutrients in the soil. It kills the mycelium layer, which goes like 6-7 feet deep in some areas. That's a huge...
I didn't even think about that. That's a great...
It's a catastrophic event. And you're usually, if you go to a healthy, planned, prescribed burn where it was properly managed, you have new growth the next year. If you're to drive through the hog fire over in Susanville, like going to one of my favorite fishing places on Hat Creek, dude, it's a fucking nuked out like death zone. It's a literal fucking dead zone. It's been 3 years.
That's what the Hayman fire looks like here. I mean, that area, it looks like a moonscape, There's no growth in there.
It's done, right? It is burned so intensely that it's sterilized land. And you and I will not see regrowth, like substantial regrowth in those areas, even with like reforestation methods, like bear teams, burned area emergency restoration teams.
Talking thousands of years, probably, right?
Generational. It's a generational thing. I want to say a generational catastrophe, because you and I will never see or be able to use those public lands like we once did before it burned, and that's a fucking tragedy, man.
Right.
I love our public lands. I
really
use them all the time. And we own that, right? You and I own those public lands. We're all public landowners. So you have that, right? You have the natural fire being removed from the ecosystems, right? When it could be a beneficial thing. Furthermore, on the land management side of things, you're talking about deadfall, you're talking about beetle kill, you're talking about all this stuff, right? What does disease typically follow? Population density, right? So now you have conchs, you have shallow rot root fungi that are just fucking up these trees. You have stump beetles. You have all these pine bark beetles that are typically bad in your area, right? But it's because of population density, right? You have an overabundance of all of this stuff. That population density gets driven up. Now disease...
And we're using less and less lumber, right? So now there's not even an industry to go and get some of that stuff, right? Because beetle kill, is beautiful in some of these log homes. Like the blues and grays and all this shit that you get, like these colors that you get out of it. It looks like a tie-dyed log almost or something.
Yeah, it's natural. Like it's not even stained. Cool. Like you don't even have to finish that. And some of it's beautiful, right? But these pine beetles, these bark beetles, they are proliferating, one, because of increased temperatures. Now, I said I was going to not bring the climate change thing into this, but the warmer temperatures typically drive up the population and breeding cycle of these animals, these bugs, right, that are killing our fucking forests. Now you have the population density to where they can proliferate and spread easily. Well, it's no big surprise that all these trees are dying off due to beetle kill. There's another problem, right? Now, what happens to these dead trees? They fall down. One wind event comes through, especially on the front country of Colorado, man, you get some gnarly ass winds up there.
Oh man, we get some. It's insane. Like there's some areas that, I go back to yearly, and they're wildlife areas, so they're only open, a few months out of the year, so wildlife can either, the elk can calve there or whatever. But every time you go in there, man, it's just like new trees, and like some of those storms that go through there are insane. Like 80-mile-an-hour gusts, right? And you'll see a tree that you couldn't wrap your arms around, but it's just snapped.
Usually mid-bowl, halfway up the tree.
Nothing. Yeah, or pulled out from the roots, right? And if anybody's ever dug up a stump,
huge.
Can you imagine the force that
Oh yeah, it takes
you
a
know what I mean?
lot of force,
It's
but they're
insane.
already weakened, right? So like all these little tendrils coming
Right.
off of their stumps, those are dried back. They're dead. They're disconnected from the primary roots.
Now you got pickup sticks kindling.
So it's going to
basically,
shatter
right?
and break all that
Yeah.
stuff. Now the fungus is going to attack that even more. So now you got a compounding factor of the fucking pine beetles. You got the fungus. You got the dryness. You got the heat. And now these windstorms will come through and blow these trees over. Now you have deadfall in combination with an overstocked forest. All this new ladder fuel, right? Ladder fuels are stuff that basically lead fire from a healthy ground level where it's cleaning it up into the canopies, and that's where you have raging crown fires just ripping across, right?
Oh man, it's insane.
So now you have
some of those.
go ahead.
Oh, some of the like stuff that I've seen. Just I've never seen. Well, I've seen some crazy shit firsthand, but like, and probably because I was in some areas I wasn't supposed to be.
Allegedly,
knock on wood. But yeah. Just like some of those, what do they call them, firenados, and just like all this crazy shit. And I know that that's more wind driven, but like some of those California fires, like watching the flames, and it's like a 200 or 300 foot wall is what it looks like.
No, that's
in
actually what it is.
perspective, on television. It's hard to tell, but it is fucking insane how high a firewall can get with it.
There was the August complex and the Mendocino complex, and actually, unfortunately, a dozer operator perished in the Mendocino complex. But basically, there was a fucking EF3 tornado made out of fire that went through the center of town, and it unfortunately killed somebody on the EF2 on the Mendocino on the August complex. I believe it was an EF3 that the heat and the energy from the fire actually created a fucking tornado, and it showed up on the National Weather Service's fucking webs or like radar as a tornado. They issued tornado warnings on fires now because it's just so insanely powerful, like the energy coming off of these fires. And that's a result of what I was just talking about earlier, right? You have all this deadfall, you have
too much fuel.
You have impressive fuel loading, right? And this is all because we've removed fire from its natural state. It's supposed to be there.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I got big into Native American culture.
They're doing it the best.
Well, I've
man.
always been big into it. They do some prescribed burns even still to this day, right? But a lot of their cultures, like if you read into some of these tribes, and I know I'm probably going to screw this up, but there was a northern tribe, like a northwestern tribe, and they kind of migrated through like northern Montana up into Canada, and then they even came down as far as like I think Colorado and Wyoming in some of the summer months, right? And some of a little bit further east. Fire was their most important like sacred thing. So they have had, and still to this day they try to carry on this tradition. Obviously they can't because they're living on reservations or maybe not in an area where you can just do what you did. But at one point when they were nomads, they had a fire burning for thousands of years, and it was the same fire. They never put it out. So what they would do is they build these like cone things. There's also a few books that describe this, and I'm sorry that I'm not shouting out where I've gotten this information, but I know I think it's the Peconi tribe. Gabby, you might need to look this up. But anyways,
looking it up.
The whole thing was about fire, and they would build these things out of like buffalo horns, and they would wrap clay around it and all this different stuff so they could carry their fire with them. And there was like the most sacred dudes in the tribe were runners, right? And they were like ultra marathon runners, which is fascinating as well,
shit right there.
So these guys would run 100 miles and scout to where they're going to camp, and they'd be running with this fire tube. And then they had multiple tubes that they could change it from, so the fire never went out. But one of their traditions before they left an area is they would burn it. So when they came back, there was this new vegetation, new life. That was their whole thing. So if they were leaving an area, they were burning that fucker down, right? Like, and going to the next place. But was kind of like the circle and their whole method And it's just totally fascinating to me. And they never had any problems. There was always, just like we were talking about, like, where's the best places to hunt? It's on the
edge of a
burn,
burn scar,
you know,
man.
that sort of thing. Yeah.
Well,
It's pretty incredible.
no, it's incredible too, because that same story is kind of repeated across indigenous cultures across the entire fucking world.
It really
Now,
is.
if you look at the,
It wasn't
no,
just
this
this
is
tribe.
repeated across the entire world. They were excellent land managers. These indigenous peoples for thousands and thousands and thousands of years have managed the land better than us dumbass Western folk think we could ever do playing God by removing fire from the ecosystem, right? They knew what they were doing. They saw what it was. They were very connected to nature, and they held it in such a high sacred regard that they kept using it for thousands of years before even written history.
It's part of
is.
the cycle.
It's,
you know, that's
fire is nature's garbage disposal. That's what it is, man.
Yep.
It is like it's a very cleansing thing. I mean, look at the indigenous cultures across the world and like sweat lodges or smoke ceremonies or the act of even smoking something, right? I mean, it's
Right.
held in high regard as a cleansing and bringing people together practice, right? And they've,
Yeah, burning sage. I
I
mean,
mean,
all that.
yeah,
sort of
I'm
stuff,
taking a
right?
naive
Like,
approach about what I see or I interpret it as, but I'm pretty sure there's hundreds of people out there that can correct me otherwise. But for an overwhelming majority of these cultures, it is very sacred, right? Smoke is cleansing, and that's kind of a
Yeah.
common thing across all these indigenous cultures. Now, they're onto something, but they were able to manage that land. Now, look at nowadays where you have these overstocked, deadfall-ridden, disease-ridden, fucking nasty forests that we have not managed because, well,
Not to mention, people plan on living where they live for a long period of time. These people
Yeah.
were nomadic, so it was like, fucking burn it down, we're out. You know, like
it's
on
like
to the next
humanity
spot.
as a culture
it's a
has, or
different-
humanity as a species has turned from like this species that was very hunter-gatherer, very connected.
Seek
Yeah.
shelter almost, you know, type mentality. It's so, I don't know, man. I just don't.
Yeah,
It blows
we
me
used to
away
be like this
that
hunter-gatherers.
in a short amount of time we can get so soft and so dumb and so
Oh, yeah.
naive to, you know, because you only see what's in front of your face.
It's-
And like, I think that's one thing that's the most intriguing about studying about those cultures, or, you know, different cultures, or, you know, history and just in general, right? It's all fucking learning lessons. And these people did it for thousands of years and never had a problem. And all of a sudden, look at us now with all of our technology and all of our resources and everything that we try to do, and we're still fucking it
we're still
up.
fucking it up.
You know, like,
Well, it's kind of
Yeah.
funny though, because those cultures were very connected with Mother Nature and the Earth, right? They're one. They're like
right.
I guess they're like they were codependent on each other in some strange fashion, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
But nowadays, if you look at human species, we're a fucking parasite. We stick in, auger in like a tick to one area, and then we just fucking destroy it until the resources
Yeah.
are gone, and then move off to the next place to fuck up. But I guess point being
Right.
made, or point of this whole diatribe that I've gone on my soapbox about is that since we don't
I love
have
it
the
though, man.
people numbers wise to manage wildlands at scale, to manage forest and lands at scale, what's the next convenient place that we could look, or tool that we could look to manage things at scale? The answer is fucking fire. Well managed fire,
Yeah.
good fire. And this is what one of those, if anybody's listening to this, I just really, really hope that I can push this idea of suffering for a little bit with like a little bit of drift smoke and like some prescribed fires, some you know, pile burning, or some land management noise with chainsaws ripping in the forest for a couple of months. Burn that shit off, because it's
Yeah.
going to prevent like situations like we get all the time.
Or turn it back into an industry. Industry.
We need
thing,
them
right?
too.
Like,
We need them too,
logging.
right? We need all of
Right?
it. That's the whole
Yeah.
thing. We need all of it.
You don't have to cut the whole thing. You can
You
cut
do selective,
You know,
sustainably managed
Select-
timber harvesting, right?
correct.
It's effective.
Yeah.
We've proven that this works. They come in, they cut all the reprod, they let their big trees grow, and they're like, okay, I want that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. Let's take 1 in 6 trees. Okay, cool.
Well, I'm going to bag on California here. I mean, they're the telltale sign of somebody that decided that leave nature, alone completely and not manage it from a wildlife standpoint, from, a forestry standpoint. And now look at what they have. They have the biggest, like Cal Fire is the biggest. What is it, private or is that a state? That would be a state run, right? State agency with God knows how many tax dollars are going to all of that infrastructure, where you probably wouldn't need as much if you would have stuck with some forest
100%.
management.
But that's the thing, though, is like we need all of the stuff, right? We need the prescribed fire. We need the loggers. We need the land managers. We need all of this stuff. And we need hunters
too. I mean, look at what they're doing with mountain lions right now. Like, the state officials are killing way more mountain lions than they ever did during a hunting season, just trying to manage it so little kids don't get eaten and pets. And I mean, it's
keep
insane.
The wildlands wild, right? But yeah, man, I mean, to manage all this shit at scale, I don't have a one size fits all solution or a magic wand solution to all this, because it's so complex and it's so nuanced.
And it's almost like it's out of control, like we've let it go too far. But the prescribed burns are definitely, I think, something that anybody should be able to put up with, I think.
Well, that's the thing, though. Prescribed fire is under a lot of attack right now. In fact, the Forest Service has suspended its prescribed fire program pending further investigation. And the reasoning behind that is because with these overstocked forests, this climate change, whether or not you choose to believe in it or not, these mismanaged forests and the lack of personnel, the litigation against logging, the litigation against the Forest Service and these land management agencies. I mean, I think that the U.S. Forest Service is one of the most litigated against agencies out there, and it's usually over land management disputes. Yeah.
Wow.
You have all these factors playing into it, right? And then you have an incident that is very high profile, like the Hemet's Peak fire in, I believe that was New Mexico, where it was started from a holdover from a prescribed fire in fucking January. Now, shit happens. Shit does happen, and prescribed fires unfortunately escape. But if we weren't having our heads rammed so far up our ass...
Wasn't there one in Yellowstone, like in the
big
80s
burn?
Or 90s or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the big burn.
Yeah. And it's these high-profile prescribed fire escapes, man. It's killing the prescribed fire. Logging is getting litigated against, and all of these things that we could use at scale. There's a lot of, how many millions of fucking public lands do we have? You said 192 million or something like that?
There's 193 million acres.
A hotshot crew doing lop and scatter and like thinning deadfall, they ain't going to do shit. They might be able to treat an acre. Maybe treat an acre depending on how thick it is, right? We need private entities. Right. We need all of this stuff. We need to throw the fucking world at it. And that's why Tim's Act is so important, man, because it provides provisions for prescribed fire and getting more people out there in the woods to do this hard work that no one wants to do. And pay them a better wage. Yes. Right? Make them professionals, man. Give them protections like structured apartments. And, dude, this needs to happen.
Hey, listen, man, we got to wrap this thing up, Brandon, man. It's been super awesome. I definitely want to have you back on again. Before we do, if you got a few more minutes to hang out, I want to talk to you. Like, if you enjoyed listening to myself and Brandon on this conversation, definitely got to go check out and subscribe to Anchor Point. You guys cover a lot of this stuff. I enjoy listening to you guys when I can. And I guess let's tell everybody where you can find Anchor Point. You guys are on all platforms, right? I think I listened to you guys on Spotify or something. You got a YouTube channel. You guys have a website. And then I know you're on social as well. I love seeing your guys' posts. Super cool, showcasing a lot of these men and women that are out there on the front lines and that sort of stuff. But let's go ahead and share all those. But then I just kind of wanted to dive into a little bit of history of the Anchor Point and why you started it before we jump off.
Absolutely.
If that's cool.
Yeah. What do you want me to start with first? Do you want me to start with like where we can find us? Okay.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Or we could drop it at the end. We could do it at the front and the end.
Ooh.
Do it at the front and the back.
I have your website pulled up as well, and it has all the Facebook, Instagram stuff.
Yeah,
So I've got that
the
pulled up.
website's gonna.
And we'll put direct links in the show notes too to all this. So all you have to do, wherever you're listening to this, is open the description or the show notes or whatever, and there'll be direct links to Anchor Point, some of these foundations. We're gonna put all that shit in there.
Man.
So yeah.
Yeah. So www.anchorpointpodcast.com or anchorpointpodcast.com. You can find the podcast itself on iTunes, Google Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, pretty much any like library or aggregator out there. I mean, it's on Podbean. It's fucking everywhere, right? Trying to get it out to as many resources as possible or aggregators as possible, right? As far as the website, there are going to be some pages down. I'm working on a pretty big project that I can't really talk about right now, but if there happens to be anybody out there that's looking to partner with that, specifically in the mental health, culturally competent mental health clinician or organizations, I definitely want to talk to you. So shoot me an email. You can get a contact us page on there on the website, or just shoot us an email at info@anchorpointpodcast.com. I'm not going to give out my phone number because last time I did that, people were beating down my door and I practically had to change my number. But yeah, we'll connect. And I guess the whole start of the Anchor Point podcast was back when I was teaching academy. One of those, you know how all good ideas come over a couple of beers and your buddies at a bar? Yeah. Yeah. There was one of those.
I know exactly.
Yeah.
How that
Solving
is.
world problems over a couple of beers, right? Yeah, and I'm just super, obviously, if you couldn't tell by listening to this episode, that I'm very, very passionate about land management, stewardship, being an outdoorsman, outdoorswoman, managing the land, and firefighting. Those are like my passions. It's made me who I am today, right? If I didn't ever get into fighting fire, I would not be the same person, obviously, that I am today. So I guess this conversation over a couple of beers during academy is like, how come no one started a wildland firefighting podcast before? I'm like, hold my beer, watch this. Took me until about 2019 to do that, and I was still actively employed with the federal agencies of the Bureau of Land Management, and it was growing into a conflict of interest. So had that going for me. Also, as an assistant captain or an engineer or the fill-in captain of my module that year, I was realizing I was taking on and assuming a lot of risk for not a lot of pay. And unfortunately, I just had to make that hard decision to give up something that I love to get out of the game and, get a big boy job and leave Neverland, if you will. So it was family reasons and, mental health reasons. I've struggled with mental health issues as well, and that's a result of my fire career, the finances and the glaring conflict of interest with Uncle Sam. So I got out of fire and got full-time into my podcast. It's not my full-time job. I wish it was, but I still have a day job. But yeah, I try and make this thing bigger, better, faster, stronger every day. I put a lot of time, energy, and resources into it. And my wife still doesn't know the ultimate bill about how much this whole fucking thing costs a year to run a podcast, but she'd be astonished if she actually found out the true numbers. But yeah, just I guess a platform for people to build better firefighters through sharing experiences and also preserving the legacies of those people in the field and what they've experienced. Give a true reality and a personal one-on-one experience and insight into the wildland firefighting career. And hopefully people will learn from that and not make the same mistakes twice, and build on that foundation that our mentors and trainers have laid before us to build a better firefighting force that advocate for better pay and mental health and all that stuff.
It's super rad, man. I'm glad that you're doing it. I think that we align really well because we have a lot of the same values on this podcast and what it's about and the whole stewardship thing, and I mean just outdoors and all that sort of stuff. And then also we want to help support your guys' community as well. So yeah, you're welcome back here anytime. This has been a lot of fun, man. We've busted through almost 2 hours now, and it was a great time. I enjoyed hanging out with you. The next time we got to do this one in person, man. We were trying to set it up, for so long in person, but we'll try to get a little bit ahead of it and get you out here to Colorado, and maybe it'll be during one of those elk hunting seasons or something.
That'd be cool.
All right. And the next time I'm in Reno, I'll stop by and at least say,
I'll take
hey.
you out on the Truckee River, man. We'll go get some lines in the water.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Sounds awesome, man. I'm all about that.
Babe, before I go, man, do you mind if I make a couple of shout outs to some homies?
Not at all, man. This is your time. Take as much as you want. So
I'd like to thank actually Jonah Goose out of your neck of the woods there. He's a representative out of Colorado, and he's one of the front runners of that Tim's Act, Wildland Firefighter Pay Parity and Classification Act. So he introduced that to Congress, and if you want to really thank a firefighter, jump on board and start supporting that. Also want to thank Joe Bronson, one of my captains. Is definitely a good mentor. Scott Salisbury, he's the one who got me into fighting fire. Chris Byrne, he taught me how to run an engine, man. That dude was solid. Got to give a little bit of love to the Redmond hotshot community. Bubby, Neil, you guys are rad. We got Grassroots, we got Kelly, Riva, Luke, a couple of people I can't mention because they're still employed and they're doing like the Fight Club kind of don't talk about Fight Club advocacy behind the scenes.
Nice.
It's pretty cool, man. And then everybody who's helped me along the ways, mentored me or taken a chance on me, man, I just definitely thank it. And also a special shout out to my wife and my boys.
That's super cool, man. Yeah, I think a lot of people skip that part, and I'm glad that we got all those people in.
Oh, yeah, man.
We're here to support you too, man, anytime. So thanks again, buddy. Real quick before we go, Anchor Point Podcast, go check it out. Give them a follow. I'm screwing it up again.
Grassroots Wildland Firefighters. Yeah.
Check out that foundation.
Thanks,
We'll talk
man.
to you soon.
Appreciate
See
it. Hopefully no one does any dumb shit out there in the woods.
Yeah.
Don't start fires, for fuck's sake.
Yeah,
Don't park your fucking truck on top of dry grass. Put out your goddamn fires. Don't shoot rocks under grass. Come on. Common sense, guys.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks, Brandon.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening to the Mountainside Podcast. If you haven't had a chance to do this already, please take a moment, follow, like, subscribe, or rate on whatever platform you catch the Mountainside Podcast at. Also, if you'd like some more information on upcoming episodes, safety tips, access to all of our affiliates, and all the badass discounts that we get here at the Mountainside Podcast, check out themountainsidepodcast.com.